If you've stopped masturbating in your later years, I need to tell you something that may shock you. Your body could already be quietly breaking down without you realizing it. I've seen men in their 60s and 70s who eat well, exercise daily, take their medications faithfully, yet still struggle with fatigue, sleepless nights, and declining confidence. What they don't know is that by abandoning one simple act of self-care, they've cut off a natural system that keeps the prostate healthy, balances hormones, and even protects the brain. I'm Dr. Mohit Khera, a urologist and men's health specialist with over 30 years of experience helping men navigate the physical and emotional transitions of aging. I've worked with thousands of older men who felt ashamed or confused about their changing desires. But I want you to hear this from a doctor who spent his life studying it. Masturbation isn't a teenage habit. It's a maintenance tool your body still depends on even now. Most men think that stopping sexual activity means they've outgrown that part of life. But here's the paradox. By giving it up, you're actually speeding up the very decline you're trying to avoid. The absence of release doesn't make you stronger. It makes your organs stagnate, your hormones slip, and your mind grow dull. So stay with me, because in the next few minutes, I'll show you what really happens when you stop masturbating. And how understanding this truth could restore your energy, your sleep, your mood, and your dignity. What you're about to learn might completely change how you think about aging. Before we begin, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell, so you never miss another men's health tip designed to keep you strong, sharp, and confident as you age. And I'd love to hear from you. If this topic resonates with you, type 1 in the comments. If it doesn't, type 0 and tell me what you'd like me to cover next. Now, let's get into the truth most men never hear from their doctors. The first thing that starts to change when you stop masturbating isn't your desire, it's your prostate. This small gland quietly suffers when it's ignored, and the effects can ripple through your entire body. 1. Your prostate starts to stagnate. When I talk to my older patients about sexual health, most of them look surprised when I mention the prostate. They expect me to talk about medications, not masturbation. But the truth is, this tiny gland between your bladder and penis has more control over your comfort, energy, and confidence than you might imagine. And what happens to it when you stop masturbating can quietly shape the rest of your health. I once had a patient named Robert, 72, a retired engineer who still played tennis twice a week. He came into my office frustrated that he couldn't sleep through the night anymore. He was waking up 5, sometimes 6 times to urinate. He had no infection, no major enlargement, no obvious disease. Yet his prostate was congested, heavy, tender, full. When I asked about his sexual routine, he smiled awkwardly and said, "Doc, it's been a long time since I bothered with that." What he didn't realize was that this very decision was the reason he felt old. You see, your prostate is like a small factory that never stops producing fluid. When you ejaculate, that fluid is flushed out, clearing waste and reducing internal pressure. But when there's no release, no way for that fluid to move. Starts to stagnate. The gland swells slightly, blood flow slows, and inflammation builds. You may start noticing changes: a weaker stream, a heavier bladder, that lingering pressure right below the abdomen, and the growing annoyance of nighttime trips to the bathroom. It's not just age. It's your body trying to tell you that something natural has been ignored. What fascinates me after 30 years in urology is how quickly the body responds once this natural rhythm is restored. When men like Robert reintroduce regular, mindful ejaculation, even once or twice a week, their symptoms often ease within weeks. Urination becomes smoother, the sense of heaviness lifts. Some even report more energy during the day, as if their body finally exhaled. That's because ejaculation doesn't just empty fluid. It improves circulation, reduces inflammation, and helps hormones like testosterone move more freely through your system. It's a small act with a surprisingly large ripple effect. Now, I know some men carry guilt or embarrassment around this topic. They see masturbation as something childish or unnecessary. But from a medical point of view, it's a natural function, just like stretching your muscles or taking deep breaths. You wouldn't call breathing shameful, and yet both serve the same purpose: to move, to clear, to keep life flowing. When you ignore that flow, your body begins to resist you. You feel heavier, slower, older than you really are. In Robert's case, what started as simple discomfort could have grown into chronic inflammation or even an infection if left unchecked. The prostate, when stagnant, becomes a perfect environment for bacterial buildup. Over time, that can affect not just your urination, but also your ability to perform sexually and your overall vitality. That's why I tell my patients, ejaculation is not about youth. It's about maintenance. It's the same reason we encourage exercise and hydration. It keeps the system clean and efficient. So if you've quietly given up on self-release, thinking it no longer matters, I urge you to reconsider. Your prostate is asking for movement, not for indulgence, but for health. It's a part of your body that depends on attention, not neglect. And once you restore that connection, you'll begin to feel the difference not just physically, but emotionally. Lighter, more in control, more alive. Because when your prostate starts to stagnate, it's only the beginning. There's another part of your body that suffers quietly too: your brain. And what happens there might surprise you even more. 2. Your brain loses its spark. There's a moment I'll never forget from my clinic years ago. A man named Thomas, 68 years old, sat across from me looking embarrassed. He wasn't there for a sexual problem. At least, that's what he thought. He said, "Doc, I can't focus anymore. I walk into a room and forget why I'm there. I used to be sharp. Now I feel like I'm fading." His words hit me deeply because I knew exactly what was happening. And it wasn't just aging, it was chemistry, brain chemistry. When a man stops masturbating, he doesn't just stop a physical act. He interrupts a biological rhythm that's been supporting his brain for decades. Every orgasm, every moment of self-release, triggers a cascade of neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin, that keep your brain alive and bright. These chemicals are the same ones that protect memory, improve concentration, and lift mood. They are nature's antidepressants and memory boosters. When they vanish for weeks, months, or years, the brain begins to lose that natural rhythm. You don't feel broken, but you feel slower, duller, less connected to life. Thomas told me he felt like he was living in a fog. His wife noticed too. He had stopped laughing as much, stopped reading, and even stopped caring about his favorite chess club. It wasn't just the loss of joy. It was the loss of the small bursts of dopamine that once kept his mind alert and curious. When he finally shared that he hadn't been sexually active in almost 2 years, I knew we'd found one of the missing pieces. See, dopamine isn't only about pleasure, it's about motivation. When that system goes quiet, even simple tasks start to feel heavy. Without the hormonal pulse that comes from sexual release, the brain loses some of its internal drive. That's why so many men tell me, "I'm not depressed, but I'm not really living either." It's a kind of emotional flatline that sneaks in quietly, disguised as aging. I suggested that Thomas reintroduce gentle self-intimacy, not as a goal for pleasure, but as an exercise in vitality. Within a few weeks, he told me something remarkable. "Doc, I feel like myself again." He was remembering names, sleeping better, and smiling more. That's not magic, that's neurology. Each release replenished dopamine, stabilized serotonin, and reminded his brain that it was still alive and engaged. From a medical perspective, sexual release is one of the simplest and most natural ways to stimulate your brain's reward circuitry. It doesn't replace intellectual challenge, exercise, or nutrition, but it amplifies them. It's like opening a window in a stuffy room. Suddenly, the air moves and everything feels clearer. That's what I've seen in countless men. When their sexual rhythm returns, their thoughts sharpen, their confidence rises, and their sense of self brightens again. It's easy to underestimate how connected your mind and body really are. Many men in their 60s and 70s tell me they feel mentally frozen without knowing why. But once we talk honestly, it becomes clear. Their brain has been waiting for stimulation, for that release that reminds it to produce balance and energy. When I look back at Thomas, I see a man who rediscovered himself not through medicine, but through reconnection. With his body, with his chemistry, with his life. And if your mind feels dull, disconnected, or tired lately, don't rush to blame old age. Sometimes the fog isn't age at all. It's absence. Because when your brain loses its spark, your emotions follow soon after. And what happens next can quietly steal the joy out of your days in ways you never expected. 3. Heightened depression and emotional numbness. Not long ago, a 71-year-old patient named Harold sat across from me, his eyes distant, voice low. He said, "Doc, I don't feel anything anymore. Not sadness, not joy. I just wake up, go through the motions, and wait for the day to end." His blood work was fine. His heart was healthy. But what he described wasn't a medical illness. It was emotional emptiness. Over the years, I've heard this same confession from many men. The world sees them as calm, composed, even strong, but inside, they feel disconnected, like the color has drained from their lives. And in many cases, the reason is surprisingly simple. They've stopped being intimate with themselves. When a man stops masturbating, it's not just a physical pause. It's an emotional withdrawal. The body loses a vital source of comfort and release. Each orgasm, each moment of touch, floods the brain with oxytocin and endorphins, the same chemicals that help us bond, soothe stress, and lift mood. They are nature's emotional reset button. When that source dries up, the nervous system slowly forgets what calm and pleasure feel like. The result isn't immediate sadness, it's numbness. You stop feeling deeply, both the highs and the lows. Days blend together, and you start believing that this dull, muted existence is what aging means. But it's not. Harold had lost his wife years earlier and told me he hadn't touched himself since her passing. "It didn't feel right," he said. "I thought that part of my life was over." But what he didn't realize was that by denying himself touch, he wasn't honoring her memory. He was slowly disconnecting from himself. After some counseling and education, he began reintroducing small moments of self-care, not out of lust, but as an act of healing. Within a month, his tone changed. He said, "I still miss her, but I don't feel empty anymore. I feel human again." That's what emotional reconnection looks like. Touch is one of the most powerful forms of medicine we have. It reassures the brain that we are safe, alive, and connected. When we stop it completely, especially in older age, the nervous system drifts into emotional hibernation. It's like living with the lights dimmed. You can see, but nothing feels vivid. That's why so many older men confuse emotional numbness with peace. They tell themselves, "I've just grown calm with age." But in truth, they've grown distant from their own bodies. In my years as a urologist, I've seen how restoring self-intimacy can soften this emotional armor. It reawakens sensitivity, both physical and emotional. Men who once felt detached begin to laugh again, feel music again, even cry again. Not from weakness, but from reconnection. The body and mind are never truly separate. When one is ignored, the other slowly dims. So, if you've been moving through your days without feeling much of anything, I want you to consider this. Maybe your emotions haven't disappeared. They've simply gone quiet, waiting for your body to call them back. You deserve to feel warmth, joy, and closeness again, even if it starts with something as simple as reconnecting with your own touch. And once that connection returns, something else remarkable begins to happen inside you. Your nights start to change, because the same release that restores emotion can also rebuild one of the most fragile parts of aging, your sleep. 4. Poorer sleep quality. There's something sacred about a man's sleep. It's when the body repairs, when the heart rests, when the mind finally quiets down. But for many men over 60, peaceful sleep becomes a stranger. They toss, they turn, they wake up at 2 a.m. staring at the ceiling, wondering why their body refuses to rest even when their day was exhausting. I've treated countless men who come to me desperate for answers. They've tried cutting coffee, taking supplements, even sleeping pills. Yet the real reason for their restless nights often lies in something much simpler. They've stopped letting their bodies release. I remember a patient named Frank, 67 years old, a retired teacher who said, "Doc, I don't remember the last time I slept through the night." He had no major health issues, no anxiety disorder, nothing that explained his insomnia. But when I asked about his sexual health, He admitted, almost whispering, "It's been years since I did anything like that." That's when I knew, because when a man stops experiencing release, whether through sex or self-pleasure, his body slowly loses one of its natural tools for relaxation. You see, during orgasm, your brain releases oxytocin, prolactin, and endorphins, powerful chemicals that shift your nervous system from stress to rest. They lower cortisol levels, slow your heart rate, and tell your body it's safe to sleep now. Without that release, your body can remain in a low-grade state of alert, like an engine that never turns off. You might not notice it at first, but night after night, the tension builds. You fall asleep only to wake up again, tired but wired, your mind refusing to settle. Frank began practicing gentle self-intimacy again. No rush, no pressure, just as part of his nightly wind-down routine. Within 3 weeks, his sleep transformed. He told me, "For the first time in years, I woke up and actually felt rested." It wasn't a miracle. It was biology returning to balance. His body had remembered how to exhale. Most men underestimate how deeply their sexual rhythm connects to their circadian rhythm. Your nervous system isn't just mechanical. It's emotional and hormonal. When you deny your body a natural release, the imbalance ripples outward. It affects not only how well you sleep, but how you feel the next day. Your focus, your patience, even your immune function. Chronic poor sleep increases inflammation and weakens resistance, which is why so many older men complain of fatigue, brain fog, or a tired body that never quite recovers. What I want older men to understand is this: rest doesn't only come from lying down, it comes from letting go. Masturbation, when viewed as self-care rather than indulgence, is one of the simplest ways to cue your body into relaxation. It tells your nervous system, "We've done enough for today. It's time to rest." And that single moment of surrender can have a profound effect on how your body heals overnight. Frank once thought his sleeplessness was a curse of old age. Now he sees it as his body's way of asking for reconnection. And I see that lesson in so many men. Once they restore this natural rhythm, their sleep deepens, their mood brightens, and their mornings no longer feel like recovery missions. But sleep is only one piece of the puzzle. Because while your nights may suffer when you stop releasing, something else begins to weaken quietly during the day. A group of muscles that most men never think about, yet depend on for their strength, control, and even their masculinity. 5. Weakened pelvic floor and circulation. One of the most overlooked parts of a man's body is also one of the most important. Sit. The pelvic floor. You don't see it, you don't think about it, but every time you stand up, hold in urine, or have an erection, that set of deep muscles is working hard for you. Yet, as the years go by, most men unknowingly stop exercising it. And when masturbation disappears from their life, those muscles lose their natural rhythm, their strength, and their responsiveness. It happens quietly, until one day, you notice that things don't feel the same down there. I remember a patient named Edward, 70 years old, a retired firefighter with a body that still looked strong on the outside. But he came to me with a problem he couldn't bring himself to tell anyone else. "Doc," he said, "I leak a little when I laugh or stand too long. And sometimes, things just don't work the way they used to." His words carried frustration, but also shame. He wasn't weak. His body was simply responding to neglect. When I asked about his sexual activity, he told me it had been years since he'd last felt aroused or released. That's when I explained to him what was really going on. Every time a man reaches orgasm, his pelvic floor muscles contract rhythmically. Natural, built-in workout that keeps those muscles strong and responsive. It's not just about pleasure, it's about function. Those contractions help maintain circulation to the genitals, support bladder control, and keep the tissue elastic and healthy. When masturbation stops, those muscles begin to atrophy, just like any other part of the body that's left unused. Over time, blood flow decreases, nerves become less sensitive, and control weakens. That's when issues like urinary dribbling, pelvic discomfort, and erectile difficulties begin to show up. Not because of aging alone, but because the system has gone idle. Edward was skeptical at first when I suggested he start gentle pelvic exercises, along with reintroducing regular self-release. "You mean that could actually help?" he asked. 3 months later, he walked into my office grinning. "Doc, it's like my body woke up again." His control improved, his confidence returned, and he told me he even felt lighter on his feet. It wasn't magic. It was movement. By simply giving his body back what it had lost, stimulation and circulation, he had reactivated the core of his physical vitality. As a doctor, I've seen time and again that sexual inactivity doesn't just affect your performance, it affects your foundation. The pelvic floor is the anchor for your lower body's health. When it weakens, your entire posture, mobility, and even digestive comfort can change. And yet, all it takes to protect it is awareness and a willingness to stay connected to your body instead of retreating from it. You see, the older we get, the more important circulation becomes, not just in the heart and brain, but everywhere. When you keep your body moving, blood flows. When you stop, stagnation sets in. And that same principle extends far beyond your muscles, because when you stop maintaining that rhythm, another vital part of your body begins to suffer quietly: your immune system. And what happens there might surprise you even more. 6. Lowered immune function. I once treated a man named Gerald, 69 years old, who couldn't understand why he was getting sick all the time. Every few weeks, it was something new. A cold, a sore throat, fatigue that clung to him for days. His lab work was mostly normal, and his diet was decent, but he told me something that caught my attention. "Doc," he said, "I just don't feel alive anymore. It's like my body's defenses have given up." As we talked more, he admitted that he hadn't been sexually active, even alone, for almost 3 years. At first, he laughed it off as unimportant, but when I explained what was really happening inside him, the smile faded. Your immune system isn't just controlled by vitamins or sleep. It's deeply influenced by your hormones and nervous system. And yes, by sexual activity. When you masturbate, your body experiences a brief but meaningful surge in circulation and a release of chemicals like endorphins and oxytocin that directly influence your immune response. Studies have shown that after orgasm, levels of immunoglobulin A, your body's first line of defense against infection, actually increase. It's your body's way of strengthening its shield. When that activity stops, those natural boosts disappear, leaving the immune system just a little less prepared each day. Gerald told me that he thought abstaining was part of being respectable in old age. But what he didn't realize was that his body was slowly losing one of its simplest defenses. Regular release helps reduce chronic inflammation, balances cortisol, and improves blood flow, all essential for keeping the immune system sharp. Without it, stress hormones can build up, inflammation rises, and recovery slows. That's why many men who've stopped sexual activity notice they get sick more often, take longer to heal, or feel generally weaker. It's not coincidence, it's chemistry. When Gerald began reintroducing gentle self-intimacy into his weekly routine, the changes came gradually but steadily. After a few months, he noticed his energy returning. He wasn't catching every cold that passed through his retirement group. His skin even looked healthier, and his mood was brighter. "It's strange," he told me, "but I feel like my body's finally working with me again." What he was really describing was his immune system coming back online, a system that thrives when the body experiences balance, movement, and hormonal stability. As a doctor, I never tell my patients that masturbation is a cure-all, but I do tell them it's a missing piece, a small, natural act that keeps the body's internal rhythm steady. When you deny that rhythm, stress builds, inflammation grows, and your defenses weaken. But when you restore it, your body remembers how to protect you again. It's like recharging a system that's been running on low power for too long. So if you've been feeling more fragile lately, catching colds, recovering slowly, or just feeling off, don't assume it's only age. Sometimes it's your body asking for reconnection, for release, for balance. Because while your immune system may suffer in silence, there's an even deeper loss that follows next. A loss that touches not just your health, but your very sense of identity. And that's where the story takes its most personal turn. 7. Loss of body. ownership and self-worth. When men stop touching their own bodies, something quiet but powerful begins to fade. It's not just sexual function or hormone balance. It's the sense of belonging inside your own skin. I've seen it in the eyes of men who once carried themselves with confidence, but now move like guests in their own bodies, unsure, detached, disconnected. One man I'll never forget was Walter, 77 years old, who told me, "Doc, I feel like I'm just living in my body, not living as myself anymore." His words struck me because they captured what so many older men silently feel but never say out loud. Masturbation, in its healthiest form, isn't about lust. It's about presence, a conversation between you and the body that has carried you through decades of life. When that relationship breaks, even unintentionally, the nervous system begins to lose its sense of connection. You stop recognizing your own body as a source of comfort or strength. You stop noticing its signals, its needs. That's why many older men lose interest not just in sex, but in movement, in grooming, even in self-care. The distance grows quietly, like a fog settling in. For Walter, it began after his wife passed away. He said it felt wrong to touch himself, like he'd be betraying her memory. But as time went on, his posture slumped, his voice softened, and he lost interest in everything that once gave him joy. I explained that reconnecting with his own body wasn't disrespectful. It was an act of healing. When he began small gestures of self-touch again, not even sexual at first, just gentle care, breathing, awareness, his energy changed. Within weeks, he told me, "I feel like I came home to myself." There's a powerful biological truth behind this. Gentle, consistent touch activates the vagus nerve, which calms the nervous system and restores emotional safety. It also boosts oxytocin, the hormone of trust and connection. Without it, anxiety and loneliness quietly take root. You start to see your body not as your companion, but as something that's aging, failing, foreign. And when that happens, self-worth begins to erode. You no longer feel vibrant, you feel invisible. But when you reconnect, even in private, even slowly, something ancient inside you remembers. You remember that you're still alive, still capable of pleasure, of care, of being in control of your own existence. Over the years, I've seen this transformation again and again. Men who once felt broken rediscover confidence not because they performed better, but because they re-established ownership of their bodies. It's like watching a spark reignite behind their eyes. The quiet recognition that their body isn't an enemy. It's their lifelong home. And here's the truth I want every man over 60 to hear. Aging doesn't mean surrendering your body. It means learning to listen to it again. That connection is not just physical, it's emotional, spiritual, and deeply human. Because when a man reconnects with his own body, he doesn't just restore function, he restores identity. And once that happens, the next step becomes clear. Learning how to bring that same energy of renewal into every part of his daily life, his habits, his sleep, his mindset, and his sense of purpose. That's where real vitality begins. 8. Reconnecting through healthy self-intimacy. By the time most men come to see me, they've already accepted that feeling tired, disconnected, or lonely is just part of aging. But I always tell them, it doesn't have to be. The body has remarkable ways of healing itself when you give it what it truly needs. And one of the simplest, most overlooked ways to do that is by reintroducing healthy self-intimacy. It's not about obsession, and it's not about chasing youth. It's about maintenance. Keeping your emotional and physical machinery tuned the way you would with your heart, your lungs, or your muscles. I remember a man named Samuel, 74, who sat across from me and said, "Doc, I feel like my body gave up on me." He wasn't sick, he wasn't depressed, but he had lost his sense of connection, his spark. When I asked about his intimacy habits, he looked down and said, "I stopped all that years ago." It just didn't seem right anymore. I told him gently that maybe that's exactly where he needed to begin again, not with guilt or shame, but with curiosity, to explore what it meant to feel alive again. I always explain to my patients that self-intimacy, especially in later life, is less about desire and more about respect. Respect for the body that's carried you through decades of struggle, love, and achievement. When you touch yourself with intention and care, you remind your nervous system that you're still connected, still capable, still human. It improves blood flow, hormone balance, and emotional grounding. But even more importantly, it brings you back into your own body, where peace, confidence, and vitality begin. Samuel took that advice to heart. He started small, simple breathing, gentle awareness, no expectation. Within weeks, he told me he was sleeping better, feeling more focused, and even smiling more. He said, "I didn't realize how much I missed feeling close to myself." That sentence stayed with me because it captured what so many men over 60 have lost: the feeling of closeness not to another person, but to themselves. When done with care and mindfulness, masturbation becomes a kind of therapy, not just for the body, but for the soul. It tells your nervous system, "I matter." It keeps the prostate healthy, the mind clear, and the emotions balanced. And it dissolves the quiet guilt and shame that have trapped so many men into thinking their sexuality expired with age. You're not broken. You're not too old. You're simply human, and your biology is still asking to be cared for. I tell every patient the same truth. Intimacy doesn't end because the years pass. It ends when you stop believing you deserve it. But the moment you reclaim that belief, your body responds in ways that feel almost miraculous. Clearer thoughts, steadier energy, calmer nights, a renewed sense of purpose. So, if you've been afraid to reconnect, start small. A few moments of awareness, a gentle act of self-care, and a promise to yourself that you're still worth the attention. Because once you take that step, something begins to awaken inside you. Not just the body, but the spirit. And that's where our final message begins. The part of this journey that reminds every man why growing older isn't about decline, but about rediscovery. 9. Conclusion: reclaiming vitality, confidence, and connection. After 30 years of working with men, I've learned something simple yet powerful. Aging is not what steals your vitality. Disconnection is. Every change you've heard me talk about, the prostate congestion, the mental fog, the emotional flatness, the restless nights, the weak pelvic muscles, the fragile immunity, and the fading sense of self, all begin when a man stops listening to his own body. But the truth is, your body never stopped listening to you. It's still waiting for attention, for care, for touch. I've seen men in their 60s, 70s, even 80s bring life back into themselves by doing one thing: reconnecting. Not out of guilt or loneliness, but out of respect. They learned that masturbation in later life isn't a shameful act, it's a healing act. It keeps the prostate flushed and healthy, the mind awake, the heart calm, and the spirit anchored. It reminds you that you are still here, still capable, still worthy of pleasure and presence. You don't have to chase youth or try to be who you were at 25. What you need now is balance. A steady, compassionate relationship with your body that sustains your strength and dignity. When you begin to see self-intimacy as maintenance, not indulgence, you open the door to something larger. Energy that lasts, sleep that restores, and confidence that returns quietly but powerfully. So if you take one message from me today, let it be this: your body is not done. Your vitality isn't behind you. It's waiting to be reawakened. Because the truth is, the moment you reclaim your connection to yourself, you stop aging in the ways that truly matter. And that, my friend, is where real health begins.